Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our preview for Succession Season 4, Episode 9, Church and State, the penultimate episode
Oh,
of this show. Let's all be sad. Let's all commiserate our depressing feelings together. And also, let's prepare for Logan Roy's funeral.
this is gonna be, I feel it in my bones, such an important, pivotal episode, especially for Roman. For those of you who have already watched the promo, that's what we're doing here today. We're talking about the promo. We're going to be breaking down parts of that promo and where it could be going with that. We're also going to be talking here about the synopsis of what they've said is going to be coming up in this episode altogether. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. I mean, the promo didn't show everything, but I feel like it actually showed quite a bit.
Yeah.
Roman the showman.
Okay. Kieran's gonna actually start to have a hard dilemma for his Emmy reel. He's submitting
I
as the
know.
lead actor now. It's like, do I submit this or do I submit telling off Skarsgård on the
Oh, that was so
mountain?
good.
Like this episode, however it ends, I think it's going to set the stage for the series finale. And I think also, if we have been paying really close attention to Succession these days, whoever we think is in charge at the start of an episode is not typically in charge at the end of the episode. Things
Yep.
tend to go south very, very fast. I think we were all sort of counting out Roman entering this past one, but with Mencken winning the election, it feels like anything could happen from here on out.
So hit that subscribe button if you want more Succession videos. We're here twice a week talking about Succession. We've got reviews, we've got previews, talking theories,
Yeah.
all kinds of fun stuff. And I know there's only a couple episodes left, but there's still quite a few videos here to go. So hit that subscribe button and stick with us. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's just talk about the theme of this episode, which is going to be about Logan's funeral. For
Yeah.
those of you who are new to the channel or you don't know, I'm a past licensed funeral director. I worked in funeral service for a really long time. I worked in, with the public. I worked behind the scenes, preparing bodies. I've done it all. It was interesting to see a lot of comments for the past while. We know that Succession has been sort of like the next day, the next day, the
Yeah.
next day, all this season of people who are just like, man, it's taken forever to get to this funeral, like he's just been sitting around for whatever. But it's like funerals do take time, and a
Yeah.
funeral of this scale is absolutely going to take time to come together.
Yeah, it's a natural, I think, part of the process, and I think the other component here is that there was an election, there was all this other stuff going on. I think it makes sense to kind of let a lot of that stuff sort of settle a little bit, and now everybody can kind of focus, and everybody handles their grief on the show clearly differently
Yes.
in a lot of different ways, and I think this is what makes Roman as sort of the eulogy speaker at this funeral so interesting in that he has not handled his grief well at all. I think it is one of the big contributing reasons why, aside from Mencken, him as a boss has been an abject failure. He has fired Joy. He handled the Jerry situation like extraordinarily badly. He's not getting along with anybody. He's just being irascible and terrible and not nice.
Yeah, I mean, grief manifests its way in a lot of different ways, right? I mean, we all know about the 5 stages of grief, and you're
Yeah.
going through, depression and anger and acceptance and all of that. And for Roman, we saw him go through denial, that stage of grief, for a very long time. Like, while this isn't happening, he could still be alive. Like, it was really hard on him. He's had no one to talk to. We've
Yeah.
seen, Shiv has had to schedule her own, sessions to cry by herself. And she has had Tom sort of in certain situations and stuff like that. But Roman has really talked to nobody. The only person that he used to have was Jerry, and he doesn't really have her anymore. Like, even there was that scene where he was like, he could use a hug kind of thing, and she was just like, nah, and he's blown it. And because of that, he's really just been sitting in his grief and not really knowing what to do with it. And we saw in this last episode where he's really feeling himself, where he's like, yeah, I'm the new Logan. Dad's gonna be really proud of me, of what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And yeah, I'm here. And a funeral is really important for a lot of people to be able to deal not only with some of their grief, but to be able to say goodbye, to get into that next stage where you start to get past some of your grieving and you get into that acceptance phase of grief. And I think where we saw in the promo where he's like, I'm Roman the showman, and he's got this speech all planned. My prediction is it's not going to go the way that he thinks it's going to go. He's going to be really prepared, and then he's going to see that casket and his father, and it's all going to unravel. And we are going to have the moment where the Emmys drive all their Emmys up to his house and are like, take them.
I think it's gonna be emotional. It's gonna be probably a mess at times. Like where I think it's going to be going in this episode, and I say this once again with the theory that like nobody is ever in the same place at the end of an episode as they are at the start of it. And Roman's flying high right now. And, this show has never been able to really compartmentalize business and personal. They've
No.
always been just all over the place.
Yes.
Roman's going to say something in this eulogy that is going to tank him. He is going to put his foot in his mouth in some really important, impactful way. He's going to say something that is going to cause things to spiral out a little bit. Maybe he says something that infers too close a relationship with Mencken. Maybe it's
Who's there?
Yeah, maybe it's something that ends up just sort of putting him and ATN in a really, really bad position where all of a sudden, here is Kendall, who can then be like, don't worry, guys. I've got this problem. I can take care of this problem. We'll send Roman out there. He's already got this out there with Jerry, so it's an easy way to get rid of Roman altogether.
Yeah, I mean, he could very well put his foot in his mouth, and I think as prepared as he thinks he is, like I said, as soon as that casket comes in or he sees his dad, if they do decide to open it, I mean, everything I think is going to change for him, and the grief that he's been just sitting on is all going to come out in front of the most powerful people in the world, including the new president.
It's gonna be so messy, but also so good. So there's one other thing I want to talk about with Kendall, but before we do even that, let's just get into the synopsis a little bit, because there's like one thing in here I find especially interesting.
Mm-hmm.
As the family girds themselves for an emotional funeral. We do use the word girds in 2023
I know, right?
HBO. Kendall finds himself at odds with Rava,
Mm-hmm.
and an opportune news from Jess. Later, Shiv tries to reposition herself within a new political landscape as Kendall rallies supporters to his side. So, Jess gets a mention in this promo, in this synopsis. Like, is this the first time Jess has ever been mentioned in a synopsis?
It might be, but she's been a very important person on this show to Kendall for a long time. So, I mean, what's the news? Jess might just not be able to support what's going on and what they did with Mencken. I mean, we saw her in this other episode not feeling good about this. She just might be like, listen, I've dealt with a lot in this time and I've supported a lot of nonsense in this time, but I can't support this. And I think if Kendall loses Jess, he's in huge trouble. She has been a rock.
Yeah, and that's where I think this could be going too. I just feel like there are a lot of people, I think, probably wondering why we had that scene with Greg and Jess. It's like, why did it have to be Jess there? I mean, it's not like Greg and Jess have been established as like this ultimate power couple within the world of Succession. No. I think it has a lot to do with this her sensing that there was this opportunity for things to change where, she and Greg, of all people, they could have turned the tide, and yet it didn't happen. And now we're in this place with Mencken in charge, and it's going to be a lot, I think, for her to take in. And while this show is about these really rich, really ridiculous people, or as Logan would call them, not serious people.
Not serious people.
The people who work under them, they all still matter. They all still have their roles to play in a lot of this. And, these not serious people are also not really functional adults in a lot of ways. And I don't know if Kendall knows how to properly adult without people taking care of his messes.
Well, and like we've said, Jess is such an important, cog in that machine for him that has been this rock, this stability, this, has been able to help bail him out of numerous situations that I think his relationship with her is really important because she's also not only been there for him through work, but, really supports him in ways that, like, I think he isn't going to realize until she says, you know what? I can really stand by a lot of things that you guys have done. But, it was kind of a bit different when things were already in place and you
Yeah.
guys were doing kind of these terrible things. You guys just put something terrible in place for business. You put like the lives of the whole country at risk for money. And that maybe she just can't stand by that anymore. Because we saw Kendall kind of on the cusp of that with his kids and everything that was going on
Yeah.
this past episode, where he was kind of like, I'm not sure, he did get pushed into doing it at a point where he was finally like, nah, Shiv, what you did, we're going forward now, not really continuing to think about that sort of balance that he was in, where he was like, yeah, I want to save the company and, sink Gojo, but at the same time, my daughter, right? So I think Jess is going to be sort of this emotional measurement for him where he's going to be like seeing a reflection of who he wanted to be disappear.
Yeah, and you can't go backwards at this point. Like, everything has already been sort of laid out, even if, Wisconsin does like get found out and everything collapses. But okay, tinfoil hat time here
Okay.
with Kindle. Here's what I think we're ultimately going to see unfold at this point. And this is where I kind of am doing like a Picard style, like facepalm at myself for not thinking about this yesterday, where it kind of felt like Kindle was going to be sort of the person at the end of all this. Like he was coming out of the election night better and insulated, but it's like Kindle also killed somebody.
Yes, he did.
Like you can't really make that go away.
Well, sort of. I mean,
Well,
it was still kind of an accident. And,
it's such
he feels responsible.
it is such a messy situation, and who knows about this? His siblings know about this. Who feels incredibly betrayed at the moment by Kindle, and it's just sort of if everything else starts to collapse, it's very well possible that we're in a situation here where we see Kindle be thrown under the bus entirely.
Yeah, I mean, Shiv left this last episode where she was really on the bottom of this, but she does have information. And that was a big play in this last episode of who has information has power. She does know about this with Kendall, and so does Roman. But I mean, Logan did really bury this before he died. So, I mean, she would really have to find a way to bring this up in a way that is believable. And we've seen her do that
Yeah.
before with the letter that she sent out about Kendall. So she absolutely would.
Yeah, like I don't know if she can prove it, but ultimately what matters here the most is just bringing it out there into the universe and presenting it in a compelling way.
Yes.
Everybody is in big trouble at this point, but we are going to get into, of course, episode 9, so much more in the review coming up. So be sure to hit that subscribe button so you guys don't miss that. Let us know in the comments what you want to see, and we'll see you here next time.